China just issued a stark warning to the Philippines, telling them to stop playing with fire after President Marcos made some explosive comments about Taiwan. This isn't just diplomatic theater. We're witnessing a critical moment that could reshape the balance of power in the South China Sea and potentially drag multiple nations into conflict. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to break down exactly what happened, why China is so furious, and what this means for regional stability and global security. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most significant diplomatic flashpoints of 2025. The China-Philippines Taiwan tensions have reached a boiling point after remarks made by Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. during his state visit to India this week. If you're interested in understanding geopolitical tensions, South China Sea disputes, Taiwan conflict implications, or Philippine-China relations, make sure to hit that subscribe button because this situation is developing rapidly and could have massive consequences for global security. Here's what we'll cover today. First, I'll explain exactly what President Marcos said that triggered China's angry response. Then we'll examine why China reacted so strongly and what their warning really means. We'll analyze the broader geopolitical implications, look at how this fits into the larger Taiwan question, explore the role of the United States, and finally discuss what this could mean for regional stability and global security. Let's get started. To understand why China is so angry, we need to look at President Marcos's exact words during his recent visit to India. In an interview with Indian media outlet First Post on Wednesday, Marcos made statements that have sent shockwaves through Beijing. If there is an all-out war, then we will be drawn into it. But that wasn't all. Marcos explained the Philippines' position in stark geographic terms. To be very practical about it, if there is confrontation over Taiwan between China and the United States, there is no way that the Philippines can stay out of it simply because of our physical, geographic location. He also cited humanitarian concerns, saying, "There are many Filipino nationals in Taiwan, and that would be immediately a humanitarian problem. We will have to go in there, find a way to help them," implying potential Philippine involvement in any Taiwan crisis. These weren't off-the-cuff remarks. They represent a significant shift in Philippine policy. Traditionally, Manila has tried to maintain a delicate balance between its alliance with the United States and its economic relationship with China. But Marcos's comments suggest the Philippines is now openly acknowledging it would be drawn into a US-China conflict over Taiwan. The timing is crucial. These statements came during Marcos's state visit to India, where he was discussing regional security cooperation. This wasn't a domestic political speech. These were comments made on the international stage, giving them added diplomatic weight. What makes these remarks even more significant is the context. Just 3 weeks ago, reports emerged that Manila was deepening security ties with Taiwan to respond to China threats, with Manila's shift potentially paving the way for the Philippines to play a bigger role in regional defense if China invades Taiwan. China's reaction was swift and uncompromising. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a strongly worded statement on Friday, warning Manila not to play with fire and urging it to uphold the One China principle. China's foreign ministry said it has lodged serious protests with the Philippines over President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s comments on Taiwan. This diplomatic language might sound routine, but lodging serious protests is one of the strongest forms of diplomatic objection short of actual sanctions or military threats. The phrase "playing with fire" is particularly significant in Chinese diplomatic language. Beijing typically reserves this phrase for situations it considers extremely serious threats to its core interests. We've seen China use similar language when warning other nations about Taiwan, Hong Kong, and other issues Beijing considers matters of sovereignty. In its statement, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said that there is only one China in the world, and Taiwan is an inalienable part of China. This reaffirmation of the One China principle isn't just rhetoric. It's Beijing signaling that it views any deviation from this position as a direct challenge to Chinese sovereignty. What's particularly concerning is the speed and intensity of China's response. Beijing didn't wait for clarification or diplomatic channels. They issued the warning within 48 hours of Marcos's comments. This suggests China views the Philippine president's remarks as a serious escalation that requires immediate pushback. The warning also comes with implicit threats. When China tells another nation to stop playing with fire, it's typically followed by consequences if the warning is ignored. We've seen this pattern before, with other countries that have crossed Beijing's red lines on Taiwan. President Marcos's comments and China's response represent more than just diplomatic sparring. They signal a fundamental shift in South China Sea dynamics and regional security arrangements. For decades, the Philippines maintained what experts call strategic ambiguity regarding potential Taiwan conflicts. Manila would emphasize its alliance with the United States while avoiding explicit statements about involvement in Taiwan scenarios. Marcos has essentially shattered this ambiguity. This shift reflects several factors. First, escalating tensions between China and Taiwan have forced the Philippines, whose northernmost point is less than 100 miles from Taiwan, to intensify its focus on a potential cross-strait conflict. Geography is destiny, and the Philippines simply cannot ignore the reality of its proximity to Taiwan. Marcos's comments also reflect the strengthening of U.S.-Philippines military ties. Under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, American forces have increased their presence in the Philippines, particularly in northern Luzon, the area closest to Taiwan. This military presence makes Philippine neutrality in a Taiwan conflict practically impossible. The Philippines hosts hundreds of thousands of overseas Filipino workers in Taiwan. In any conflict scenario, Manila would face enormous domestic pressure to protect these citizens. Marcos was acknowledging this political reality when he mentioned the humanitarian problem that would arise. This development also reflects broader changes in regional security arrangements. The Philippines is increasingly integrated into U.S.-led security frameworks in the Indo-Pacific, including closer cooperation with Japan, Australia, and South Korea. These relationships make strict neutrality in a major regional conflict extremely difficult to maintain. To understand why China reacted so strongly, we need to examine how Marcos's comments fit into Beijing's broader Taiwan strategy and regional security concerns. Beijing considers Taiwan reunification its most important foreign policy objective. Any suggestion that other countries might intervene in a Taiwan conflict directly challenges China's calculation that it could achieve reunification through military means if necessary. Marcos's comments suggest the Philippines might not remain neutral, potentially complicating China's strategic planning. China's harsh response also reflects fears about a domino effect. If the Philippines openly acknowledges it would be drawn into a Taiwan conflict, other regional countries might make similar statements. This could lead to the formation of a broader coalition opposing Chinese actions regarding Taiwan. The Philippines and China are already engaged in territorial disputes in the South China Sea, with tensions escalating over features like Second Thomas Shoal and Scarborough Shoal. Marcos's Taiwan comments add another layer to these existing tensions and could lead to increased Chinese pressure in the South China Sea. These developments also strain ASEAN unity. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations has traditionally maintained collective neutrality on Taiwan issues. If the Philippines takes increasingly explicit pro-Taiwan positions, it could fracture ASEAN consensus on China policy. From a military perspective, explicit Philippine involvement in Taiwan scenarios changes regional force calculations. The Philippines provides crucial geographic positioning for any US-led response to a Taiwan crisis, including potential bases for operations and logistics support. While the US isn't directly mentioned in the immediate China-Philippines dispute, American influence is central to understanding these developments. The Philippines and United States have a mutual defense treaty dating back to 1951. While this treaty's application to Taiwan scenarios remains legally complex, the practical reality is that close US-Philippines military cooperation makes Philippine neutrality difficult to maintain. Recent US-Philippine military exercises have included American forces and new missile systems, with China issuing warnings about these developments. This growing military integration makes the Philippines an increasingly important part of US Indo-Pacific strategy. For the United States, Philippine statements supporting potential involvement in Taiwan scenarios are both helpful and problematic. They demonstrate alliance solidarity, but also raise the stakes and could provoke stronger Chinese responses throughout the region. The Philippines' position reflects broader US efforts to build coalitions of allies and partners willing to support Taiwan. However, explicit statements like Marcos's comments force allies to take public positions that may escalate tensions. This diplomatic crisis will likely have significant economic and strategic consequences for all parties involved. China is the Philippines' largest trading partner, with bilateral trade exceeding $70 billion annually. Beijing has previously used economic pressure against countries that cross its red lines on Taiwan, including tourism restrictions, trade barriers, and investment limitations. Chinese investment in Philippine infrastructure, including Belt and Road Initiative projects, could be affected. Beijing might slow or cancel projects as a form of diplomatic pressure, though this would also harm Chinese interests. The Philippines may accelerate military modernization efforts and deepen defense cooperation with the United States and other partners. This could include acquiring new missile systems, upgrading bases, and expanding joint training exercises. If tensions continue escalating, we might see an accelerated regional arms race as countries prepare for potential conflict scenarios. This includes not just military hardware, but also intelligence capabilities, cyber defenses, and space assets. Looking ahead, several scenarios could unfold from this diplomatic crisis. Both sides might seek to walk back tensions through diplomatic channels. The Philippines could clarify that Marcos's comments were hypothetical rather than policy commitments, while China might accept such clarifications to avoid further escalation. Alternatively, China might maintain pressure on the Philippines through various means, including economic measures, diplomatic isolation efforts, or increased military activities near Philippine territory. The Philippines might respond to Chinese pressure by deepening ties with the United States and other partners, potentially leading to more explicit security commitments and increased military cooperation. Other ASEAN countries will be watching closely to see how this crisis develops. Their responses could either isolate the Philippines within ASEAN or lead to broader regional concern about Chinese pressure tactics. This China-Philippines dispute over Taiwan has implications far beyond Southeast Asia. How this crisis resolves could set precedents for how China responds to other countries that make similar statements about Taiwan. It also tests whether countries can openly discuss Taiwan involvement without facing severe consequences. The situation tests the strength of various alliance relationships and whether partners are willing to accept risks associated with supporting each other on sensitive issues like Taiwan. Any escalation of tensions in the South China Sea region could affect global trade routes, shipping costs, and supply chains, given the area's importance for international commerce. The crisis also tests concepts of democratic solidarity, as Taiwan represents one of Asia's most successful democracies, and how other democratic nations respond could influence broader democratic resilience in the region. The China-Philippines dispute over President Marcos's Taiwan remarks represents a significant moment in regional geopolitics. China's accusation that the Philippines is playing with fire after Marcos said the Southeast Asian nation would be drawn into any conflict between China and the United States over Taiwan signals that we're entering a new phase of tensions in the Indo-Pacific. What we're witnessing is the end of strategic ambiguity for many countries in the region. The Philippines' geographic proximity to Taiwan, its alliance with the United States, and the presence of hundreds of thousands of Filipino workers in Taiwan make neutrality in a Taiwan conflict practically impossible. President Marcos was simply acknowledging this reality. For China, this represents a significant challenge to its Taiwan strategy. Beijing's calculations for potential military action regarding Taiwan depend partly on limiting third-party involvement. When countries like the Philippines openly acknowledge they would be drawn into such conflicts, it complicates China's strategic planning and potentially raises the costs of any military action. The broader implications extend far beyond the immediate dispute. We're seeing the formation of clearer camps in the Indo-Pacific, with countries increasingly forced to choose sides on critical issues like Taiwan. This polarization could lead to a more dangerous and unstable regional environment. For global audiences, this development highlights how quickly regional tensions can escalate and how statements by political leaders can have far-reaching consequences. The Philippines and China will need to find ways to manage these tensions to prevent further escalation that could destabilize the entire region. If you found this analysis helpful in understanding these complex geopolitical developments, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more content on international relations and regional security issues. What do you think about President Marcos's comments? Was he right to acknowledge the Philippines would be drawn into a Taiwan conflict, or should Manila have maintained strategic ambiguity? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to stay updated on developments in China, Philippines, Taiwan tensions, and other geopolitical issues, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any breaking news analysis. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll explore the broader implications of rising tensions in the South China Sea. Until then, stay informed and keep analyzing. Subscribe, share, and like the video.